So in today's video I wanted to talk a little bit about a mistake I see a lot of intermediate guitarists make when they're trying to improvise, and give you some ways to maybe potentially solve that problem. So let me know if this sounds familiar. You've got home from work, school, whatever it is, and you decide you're going to throw on a backing track and try to finally, put those pentatonic scales you've been practicing to use. And you start going, and it's cool, but as it goes on, you feel like you're playing the same stuff, you feel like you're getting lost, you feel like you're getting confused. And this is a really common problem, you're not alone. I've definitely dealt with it a ton myself in the past, and so do pretty much all of my students who come to me when we talk about improvising. It can be really, really tricky to kind of work your way through. But one of the big things that I always try to encourage my students to think about is I describe this problem that comes up a lot as trying to play our way out of a problem, and it never works. But what that means is, say the backing track's in G minor, you're rocking out doing your best blues, then maybe inspiration runs dry, and what we end up doing is we just sort of start we try to play our way out of a problem. We just don't stop playing. And we start running kind of meaninglessly through the scale, and it's not very musical, it doesn't sound great, and we feel like we're never going to get the hang of this improvising thing, and we want to throw our guitar at the wall. At least that's how I used to feel when this happened. And one of the biggest things that I always recommend to students to try is to think about when they're improvising as if they're having a conversation or writing an email. And the thing that I think is missing when we try to play our way out of a problem, it's almost like punctuation in a sentence. It makes it easier to read and digest, or it pauses, natural pauses when you're having conversation with a friend. It kind of gives you space not only to breathe, but it also can give you time to think about and formulate what you're going to say next. And it's a luxury that I find a lot of intermediate guitarists don't afford themselves, is the time to actually think about what they're doing. So what do I mean when I say use punctuation? It means that you want to kind of think in phrases, and when you start running out of ideas, you put a period or a comma in your playing. So say I start out, I come in hot. That was a period. So here I'm putting in deliberate pauses into my playing. And what that does is it gives me a second to kind of stop and pause, think about what I'm going to do next, breathe a little bit and take it in. Because when we're improvising, it happens so fast, sometimes it feels like you're a dog chasing a car. You're never going to catch up, and even if you did, you don't know what you would do with it, right? So putting in these deliberate pauses when it feels like a sentence is coming to its end, a musical sentence, for example, when it feels like it's coming to an end it. Take a second, listen to the backing track, and think about what would naturally happen next. And another thing that you can do to try and help yourself is that I never make my students do this in front of me the first time I bring this up, because people tend to get clammy. But I'd really recommend trying to do, I call it a say and play exercise, which means in whatever capacity you have, you try to sing what you're playing, either before you play it or while you're playing it. And it's a really good way to come up with ideas, because the guitarists that we hear in our head are often significantly better than the guitarists that we are in real life. You know what a burning guitar solo sounds like that you'd love to play, but you don't necessarily know how to do it. And you can kind of cheat yourself into doing it by taking your ideas. Like, say I'm in the first two positions of the G minor pentatonic scale, and I'm on a G minor backing track. So there, I'm singing my ideas while I do it, and if you can only hear it in your head at first, you're too scared to sing, that's okay. But using that as your way of going, it kind of gets the guitarist in your head to start collaborating with the guitarist that you actually are. And all I'm doing is trying to think of the shape of that melody. And what I'm doing is I'm just fitting it to notes of the pentatonic scale. In that, I didn't play anything that wasn't in this box. So it's almost like you have the idea, and then you filter it through the pentatonic box that you're working on, or the arpeggio box that you're working on, or whatever it may be. And you use this to kind of do it. And the great thing about singing or involving your voice somehow is that you literally have to take breaths. That's kind of the problem with the guitar versus instruments like maybe a trumpet or a saxophone, is that you physically have to take breaks to breathe when you play those instruments, and we don't when we play the guitar. So something about activating your voice when you're playing, or thinking about activating your voice, can make you take pauses where you wouldn't normally do so if you were just, trying to burn the living daylights out of a G minor backing track. So this idea of using punctuation and not playing ourselves out of a problem, because we can't play ourselves out of a problem, and using our voice to kind of summon the guitarist in our heads is a really powerful tool for improving your improvisations. Because again, you know what a fantastic guitar solo sounds like, but when we try to kind of reverse engineer a great guitar solo by forcing whatever it is we've been working on the neck to come out, rarely does that go well for us. So just to recap, you want to have punctuation so that you can kind of feel where you're at and breathe. And it also makes your playing a lot more listenable to people, because they can actually digest and hear what you're trying to do, rather than feeling like they're getting assaulted by the G minor pentatonic scale or whatever scale you're using. And when you use that guitarist in your head and you sing some of your stuff, you will probably come up with significantly better musical ideas, because again, the guitarist in our head is usually better than the guitarist that we are. Even as a professional musician, the stuff that's in my head is way better than what comes out of my fingers all the time. So that's just a couple thoughts on improving what I find to be a really, really common kind of sticking point for a lot of my students, and it's something that used to frustrate me a lot. The other thing when you're improvising that I just want to remind you all is to be kind to yourselves. It's really, really hard to spontaneously create music, and it's something that all of us are always working on. But if you found this video useful or interesting, I'd really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe. It truly helps me out more than you could know. If you want to take a guitar lesson with me, you can find a link to that down in the description. You can get in touch. I'd love to work with you. I've been working with a bunch of you guys from YouTube lately, and it's been super fun to connect with people all over the world. If you want to support me or the channel, you can purchase my video course or my book down in the description there. You could also subscribe to my Patreon and get some early access to videos and help support me putting out all of this free educational content. And last but not least, I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I hope you get to have some fun playing the guitar. Thank you so much for watching.